Nature is beautiful, but it can also be absolutely unforgiving. Every year, hikers set out on trails looking for adventure, peace, or just a break from the chaos of daily life, but not all of them make it back. 2025 has already seen some truly disturbing and mysterious hiker deaths, from chilling disappearances in remote forests to brutal accidents that seem impossible to explain. Some of these cases will make you rethink your next solo hike. So, buckle up, because these stories aren't just tragic, they're downright chilling. The discovery on Bell Mountain sent shockwaves through the quiet wilderness. A pair of young lives ended in the most brutal, inexplicable way. On March 8, 2025, a hiker stumbled upon the bodies of 19-year-old twin brothers, Qadir and Nazir Lewis, lying lifeless at the summit. Both had been shot. Just the day before, they had missed their 7 a.m. flight to Boston, where they were supposed to visit friends. Now they were gone, and the circumstances surrounding their deaths only deepened the mystery. Authorities quickly leaned toward a chilling explanation: murder-suicide. But to those who knew the twins best, that theory made no sense. Their family immediately pushed back, refusing to accept that one would turn on the other. They had been inseparable since birth, protective of one another in a way only twins could understand. They weren't just brothers, they were best friends. Their uncle, Rahim Bronner, struggled to make sense of the tragedy. "They love each other," he said. "I couldn't imagine them hurting each other because I've never seen them even get into a fist fight before. The very idea that one of them could have snapped and killed the other before turning the gun on himself felt impossible. Yet the facts refused to align. The twins had no history of violence, no struggles with mental health that anyone was aware of, and no known reason to be on that mountain in the first place. There was no suicide note, no alarming behavior in the days leading up to their deaths. The family was left with a chilling question: if they didn't do this to each other, then who did, and why? Their aunt, Yasmin Bronner, voiced what so many were thinking. "Something happened in those mountains, and we want answers," she said. She and the rest of the family couldn't shake the feeling that someone else was involved, pointing out one eerie detail. The brothers had never been to Bell Mountain before. They weren't hikers. They had no known connection to the area, and yet, somehow, they ended up there, miles from the airport where they had last been seen, their plane tickets still tucked inside their wallets. It was as if they had vanished for a day, only to be found in a place that made no sense, under circumstances that made even less. The family also questioned how the twins got to Bell Mountain. It wasn't close to the airport, and neither of them had a car with them that day. If they hadn't planned to go there, then who took them? And more importantly, who was the last person to see them alive? Qadir and Nazir had dreams. They wanted to start their own clothing brand, a vision they had talked about for years. They had a strong support system, a family that would have noticed if something was wrong. None of it pointed to a tragic act of desperation. The Georgia Bureau of Investigation confirmed that autopsies had been completed, but the final forensic results were still pending. Without those answers, speculation only grew, fueled by the unsettling contradictions in the case. The family, desperate for clarity, launched a GoFundMe to cover funeral expenses, hoping that, at the very least, they could lay the twins to rest with dignity. For now, Bell Mountain holds its secrets. But for the Lewis family, one truth remains undeniable. Qadir and Nazir didn't go there alone. Someone led them up that mountain, and somewhere, that person still walks free. For months, her disappearance remained a haunting mystery. Sahela Sangrait, a 21-year-old woman with a bright spirit and dreams of a fresh start, vanished without a trace in August 2024. No signs, no clues, just silence. Her family held on to hope, replaying every last memory, grasping at any possible explanation. But deep down, an unshakable fear crept in. The longer she remained missing, the harder it was to ignore the dreadful possibility that something terrible had happened. Then, on March 4th, 2025, the worst possible news arrived. A hiker navigating the rugged, isolated terrain near Hill City made a grim discovery: a body, badly decomposed, abandoned in the wilderness. The remote location, the condition of the remains, the way she had simply vanished, it all pointed to something horrifying. The confirmation came soon after. The body was Sahila's. Her family's worst fears had come true. Their daughter, their sister, their friend, gone. And with that devastating truth came another. Someone had done this to her. But who and why? Authorities wasted no time. Days later, they arrested 24-year-old U.S. Air Force Airman Quintarius Chappell. The charge? Second-degree murder. The revelation sent shockwaves through the community. Not just because Sahila had been killed, but because of where it had allegedly happened: Ellsworth Air Force Base, where Chappell was stationed. How did she end up there? What happened behind those heavily guarded gates? And perhaps the most chilling question of all, how long had the truth been buried before her body was finally found? Sahila had been last seen in Eagle Butte, staying with a friend. She told them she planned to head back to Box Elder, the town where she was from, to grab some belongings before setting off on a long-anticipated trip to California. It was supposed to be a fresh start. Instead, it became the beginning of a nightmare. No one knows for sure what happened next. Did she ever make it to Box Elder? Or was she intercepted before she could get there? How did she end up at Ellsworth Air Force Base? And most disturbingly, was she held there for a time before she was killed? Authorities have yet to reveal the exact nature of Sahila's connection to Chappell. Was he a friend, a boyfriend, someone she trusted? Or was this a chance encounter that spiraled into something horrific? The military has remained tight-lipped, offering little more than formal statements. But one sentence from the base's commander, Colonel Derek Oakley, stood out, a stark and chilling reminder of the weight of what had happened. "We hold airmen accountable for their actions," Oakley stated. "If service members are found in violation of military or civilian law, they will be punished." It was a careful, measured statement, one that suggested the Air Force was prepared to distance itself from Chappell if he was convicted. But for Sahila's family, it wasn't enough. They didn't just want accountability, they wanted the full truth. Sahila was not just another name on a missing persons list. She was a daughter, a friend, a young woman with hopes, ambitions, and a future she was eager to chase. Those who knew her spoke of her as a mesmerizing presence, witty, intelligent, full of light despite the hardships she had endured. She had been dealt a difficult hand in life, but had met every challenge with resilience and a smile. That light, that resilience, had been stolen. As the case moves forward, her loved ones are left to grapple with unbearable grief and a mountain of unanswered questions. Why was she killed? What happened in the days after she vanished? Who else might have known the truth before her body was finally found? The investigation remains ongoing, involving a vast network of local, state, and federal law enforcement agencies, including the FBI and the Bureau of Indian Affairs Missing and Murdered Unit. Authorities are urging anyone with information to come forward, but for now, justice for Sahila remains just out of reach. In the wake of this tragedy, her family has created a GoFundMe to help cover funeral expenses, ensuring that Sahila, who was known to those closest to her as Shy, receives the farewell she deserves. The fundraiser paints a portrait of the woman she was, of a life filled with hope and kindness. Shy is a beautiful, inclusive, and mesmerizing spirit, it reads. She attacked life head-on with a smile on her face. Somewhere along the way, that light was extinguished. Someone made the decision to take her life, and now, those who loved her are left with only one hope: that the full truth will come to light, and that whoever is responsible for her death will finally answer for what they have done. The wind roared through Rhode Island that day, relentless and unforgiving. It tore through power lines, left entire neighborhoods in darkness, and even ripped the roof from a mill building in Taunton. It was the kind of storm that demanded attention, a force of nature that made people stop and take shelter. But for Edward Clish, a 62-year-old man from Uxbridge, Massachusetts, the wilderness had always been a place of peace, a refuge from the chaos of the world. On March 7, 2025, he set out on the Nipmuc Trail in Burrillville, Rhode Island, likely unaware of the danger looming above. It was a trail he had walked before, familiar and quiet, offering the kind of solitude only nature can provide. But as the wind howled through the trees, branches twisted and strained against the force, some bending, others breaking. One, massive and heavy, finally gave way. Hours passed before his family found him. The sight was devastating. Edward lay unresponsive beneath the crushing weight of a tree branch, his body battered by the very nature he had loved so deeply. There was no warning, no time to react. One moment, he had been walking through the wilderness, breathing in the fresh air, and the next, fate had intervened in the cruelest way possible. Emergency responders rushed to the scene, but the damage had already been done. He was taken to Landmark Medical Center in Woonsocket, but there was nothing more they could do. The windstorm that had left thousands without power had claimed a life. Investigators from the Burrillville Police Department and the Rhode Island Medical Examiner's Office are still piecing together the final moments of Edward's life. Was the tree already weakened, waiting for just the right gust to send it crashing down? Or was it simply a case of being in the wrong place at the worst possible moment? The uncertainty only adds to the tragedy. It's a terrifying reminder of how unpredictable nature can be, how a peaceful walk can turn deadly in an instant. But Edward Clish's story is not just one of tragedy. Those who knew him refused to let his final moments define him. He was a man of adventure, a spirit drawn to the beauty of the world around him. He embraced life, stepping into each new day with curiosity and warmth. His obituary captured what those closest to him knew best. His presence was a beacon of joy, his impact immeasurable. He will not just be remembered in words, but in the places he loved, the winding trails, the rustling trees, the crisp morning air of the wilderness. His spirit lingers there, in the quiet moments of nature's beauty, in the whispering wind that carries his memory forward. The bitter cold of the Deoladhar Mountains was unforgiving that day, the kind of chill that seeps into your bones and makes every step a battle. For Tom Howard, a 27-year-old British hiker, and his friend, the trek had been meant as an adventure, an escape into the breathtaking beauty of the Himalayas, a challenge to push themselves against nature's raw and untamed power. But what they didn't know was that the path they had chosen was forbidden in the winter months. The risks were too great, the terrain too unstable, and soon they would pay the ultimate price for that mistake. They had set off on February 14th, trekking from Dharamkot towards the snowline via Triund, a popular yet treacherous route when the mountains were blanketed in ice and snow. The ascent had been challenging but exhilarating. The world stretched out beneath them in an endless sea of white, the silence only broken by the crunch of their boots on frozen ground. But the descent, where most tragedies occur, was where everything went wrong. Somewhere along the way, Tom lost his footing. Maybe the ice gave way beneath him, or perhaps he miscalculated his step. Whatever the reason, he fell. It wasn't just a slip, not something he could brush off with a laugh. His body slammed against the unforgiving rock and ice, ribs shattering on impact. The pain must have been unimaginable. Each breath a struggle, the cold gnawing at his exposed skin as his friend rushed to his side, helpless against the brutal force of nature. His friend, despite his own injuries, knew that time was running out. He left Tom behind and fought his way back down the mountain, desperate for help. The altitude made every breath a battle, but he pushed forward, driven by fear and determination. By the time he reached authorities, night had fallen and the temperature had plummeted even further. A rescue team was quickly assembled. Firefighters, police, and the State Disaster Response Force. They knew what they were up against. The mountain didn't care about urgency. It was a cruel, unyielding force that swallowed people whole if they weren't careful. The team moved as fast as they could, but the path was brutal. By the time they reached Tom, he was barely hanging on, his condition critical. The descent was agonizing. The rescuers placed him on a stretcher, but the icy terrain made every step a grueling struggle. It took them nearly 2 hours to cover just 100 meters. More teams were called in for reinforcement, pushing through the brutal landscape as they fought to get him down to safety. Hours turned into an entire day. And yet, despite all their efforts, despite the sheer willpower of those trying to save him, the mountain had already claimed its victim. Tom was finally brought to an ambulance, more than 24 hours after his fall. But it was too late. He was pronounced dead at the hospital, his body battered from the impact, his liver lacerated, his chest and abdomen ravaged by internal injuries. The fall had been from a significant height. There had never been a real chance. The news sent shockwaves through those who knew him. Tom had been more than just an adventurer. He had been brilliant, ambitious, a young man who had attended the prestigious Cranleigh School before going on to Durham University. He had earned a master's degree in natural sciences, carving out a promising future for himself at Quantexa, a financial security firm in London. He was someone who had his whole life ahead of him, a life that ended far too soon in the cold, isolated vastness of the Himalayas. Back in England, his family and friends were left reeling, struggling to make sense of the tragedy. The Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office extended their support, but no amount of words or condolences could undo what had happened. The mountains, as breathtaking as they are, do not forgive mistakes. In winter, when the world turns to ice and the air itself feels like knives against the skin, they become something else entirely, a silent predator waiting for one wrong step. Tom had unknowingly stepped into that danger, and like so many before him, he had not been able to escape. The roar of the waterfall echoed through the dense rainforest, its mist hanging in the humid air like a veil. Carl Newman, a 49-year-old man from Waikapu, had spent his life surrounded by the beauty of Hawaii, the land he called home. The winding paths, the towering cliffs, the lush greenery. This was familiar ground. But nature, no matter how well you think you know it, can be as ruthless as it is breathtaking. It was supposed to be an ordinary hike, a peaceful escape into the wild beauty of Maui with a group of acquaintances. The trails near Hana Highway were legendary, a winding passage through paradise itself, lush rainforests, cascading waterfalls, and narrow, treacherous pathways carved into the cliffs. The kind of scenery that could take your breath away in an instant. And in one tragic moment it did. As they made their way along the trail, Carl moved carefully, taking in the view, the endless blue sky stretching above the emerald canopy. Then, in a split second, everything changed. He lost his footing. Maybe it was a misstep. Maybe the ground beneath him gave way. It didn't matter. The moment gravity took hold, there was no stopping it. He plummeted down the jagged cliffside, the sheer force of the fall stealing any chance of survival. 60 feet. That's how far he fell. Long enough for terror to set in, short enough for the brutal impact to be instantaneous. By the time his body came to rest near the base of the waterfall, it was already too late. A call for help sent emergency responders racing to the scene, but reaching Carl was no simple task. The rugged terrain, the towering height of the fall, this was not a place easily accessed. A helicopter had to be brought in just to recover his body, the hum of its blades cutting through the heavy silence that had settled over the forest. Authorities quickly ruled out foul play. It was a tragic accident, a grim reminder of how unforgiving the elements could be, even to those who knew them best. An autopsy was scheduled, but there was no mystery to unravel. A moment's misstep, a cruel twist of fate, and a life was gone. The Maui Police Department extended their condolences, but words could only do so much. The beauty of the Hana Highway remained unchanged, its waterfalls still spilling over the cliffs, its narrow bridges still winding through the rainforest. Travelers would continue to come, drawn by the promise of adventure, by the magic of the island. But Carl's story would serve as a silent warning. Nature does not discriminate. It does not hesitate, and sometimes even paradise has a dark side.